here we are in chapter 6. I promised I wouldn't cry, but it's tough because this is the final chapter, y'all. I'd like to quickly touch on some things we learned throughout the course so we can see just how far we've come and so you can feel super duper proud of yourselves. Then we'll prepare our project with a more standard file structure so you're ready for the final challenges. In Chapter 1, we set up everything we needed to do modern Python programming. We didn't just install Python and be done with it. Nah. We are version controlling our code with GitHub and Gitkraken and using PyCharm, which is an amazing IDE. We then answered the question, what is automation engineering? And you learned that automation engineers are software engineers that are building things and solving problems that are different than a typical feature or product developer. You also learned that our main focus is to accelerate quality, and that became our main focus throughout the rest of the course. Oh yeah, and we wrote our first program in Python. That feels like ages ago though, and that program seems so simple now, right? Chapter 2 was all about how we explore, investigate, experiment, ask questions, and think critically before even thinking about writing code. We can't write proper test automation without doing these things first, and hopefully that's really apparent now. We started by introducing pipenv, which is the modern package manager for Python. We used it to install PyTest, which is a very powerful testing framework for Python, and that's what we've been using to write all of our automated tests. We then learned about theories and questions to come up with different test cases and scenarios, which we then used to drive our automated tests. We learned about how to code logic into our algorithms using if-else, and even about negative testing, which we used to point out potential flaws, risks, and weaknesses in the application. If you remember, this was the chapter where we built the coins game. This game was way more complicated than any of the previous challenges. Because of that, we had to introduce quite a bit. We learned about comparison and logical operators, which are used to give us greater control of our algorithms. We learned about packages and modules, which we now know are just special folders and files in Python, but knowing this fundamental piece will help you a ton as you continue learning Python programming, especially as you start reading and researching different tools and libraries from people all over the world. Then we learned about behavior-driven development and test-driven development, better known as BDD and TDD. This made finishing the coins game relatively easy. If we were to diagram the BDD and TDD process, it would look something like this. We start with BDD, which we learned is a practice to collaborate with everyone on the team to understand what we're building and why. We used features, scenarios, and examples to drive this collaboration and understanding. This directly fed into TDD, where we define the specs to understand how to build it. These specs were based off of the scenarios and examples, but sometimes we did have to make additional specs as we learned more during writing the code. We then write the tests to satisfy the specs. These tests then drive our refactoring and design. Lastly, we optimize. It's much easier to design and organize our code when we have a better understanding of what we're trying to build and that end goal. So make your final touches, optimize anything remaining, and then submit the pull request for code review. Getting feedback is another important part of testing and quality, and something that only makes our code, ideas, and solutions better and better. Constant and frequent feedback should be something that everyone on the team cares about. Sometimes feedback can be hard to hear, but take it like a champ. Don't take it personally and see it as an opportunity to learn and get better. If you're giving someone else feedback, be kind and watch what you say and how you say it. Remember, we're all a team, so let's take care of each other. This was a shorter chapter, but we did cover some really cool and powerful stuff that you'll be using a lot as a programmer. We learned about collections and what you can do with them, but now you've seen them in real-world scenarios. We learned about loops and dictionaries, which are some of my favorite things to work with in code. And most recently, Chapter 5, which was all around web automation. I introduced you to web automation and why it's important. We used WebDriver with Pylenium, which is a tool I created. Then we learned about actions and fixtures so we could better organize and optimize our tests and code. And lastly, we learned about scraping data off the website to use it throughout our tests. I would like to pause for a sec and talk about ethical hacking. I have given you new powers of web automation and scraping. Can you feel it at your fingertips? Bzz, bzz, bzz. But please be careful with that power. Uncle Ben said it best. With great power comes great responsibility. Most of the time, you sign up for some service or account, they show you a privacy policy or terms of service that probably none of us actually read. However, do know that many of these policies make scraping or other forms of automation illegal. Sometimes that could just be an account termination or permanent ban, but it could also mean really high fines above $10,000 or even legal prosecution. I can't stress this enough. Please be careful with what you automate. There are many demo websites like Swag Labs if you're just looking to practice and learn. Doing something like creating bots to give your video millions of views will, guaranteed, get you in a crazy amount of trouble. Just be smart on the web. And with that, we're done with the review. We covered a ton, so give yourselves a round of applause. And pat yourself on the back too. I mean, seriously, you are awesome. We're killing it. But let's move on to the file structure. For the remainder of this course, we will use a standard file structure. Right now, we're putting everything into our chapters package for learning purposes, but that's not how real projects are structured. The standard file structure starts with your project root, which has a bunch of files like configs and global files and project files, your README, and all that good stuff. From there, you have your application package, which stores everything about the application. That would be our page actions and flow actions and anything else that's relevant to the app. The next package is the tests package, which stores our feature files and test files. Let's show this a different way using a diagram. But it's going to show the same thing, just in a more visual form. Project root is the top level directory which will have the application and tests packages. The application package will hold any relevant folders or files like our actions. You might also have some services or helpers that aid with your actions too. The tests package will hold our feature files and test files, and that's about it. Now, let's take the same diagram but replace it with the packages and files we have. The project root is the same, but our application is called Swag Labs. We'll just call it Swag for short, and then we'll have our tests package as well. Under Swag, we're going to have our actions. So one of them that we have is called productpage.py. We also have our actions.py as well. Right now, I don't have any services or helper modules in my code base. You might have something, so I just put a TBD for to be determined. You might have something, you might not. Under tests, we'll put our features. So for example, I have my product_sort.feature file and our test files as well, test_product_sort.py. See? Not too bad. It's a simple and easy way to organize our project. Let's create this in code. We'll start inside of GitKraken, and we're going to make a chapter 6 branch. There we go. And then switch over to PyCharm. In our project root, create a new directory called swag, and then make another directory called tests. Under tests, make a new directory called features. This is where we're going to store all of our feature files. All right, let's open up chapters and then chapter 5. And let's copy all of the relevant feature files to our new features directory. So checkout we wanted, we don't care about the Google.feature. So login feature and the product feature. So all three of these features belong to Swag Labs. So I'm going to copy these. Copy. You could also just do Control or Command C. So copy that. And then select features and paste it in. You could also just do Command or Control V. Yes, please. And there we go. Now we're copying and pasting because I don't really want to mess with anything in the chapter 5 package. We might break something or mess something up with all the challenges we did in here. So for now, we're just copying and pasting them and leaving these by themselves. All right, now let's copy the relevant test files and conftest.py and paste them under our test package. So conftest.py, we want test challenge 3, test challenge 4, cares about Google, and test product sort.py. So copy these, select the tests package, and paste them in there. There we go. Okay, then let's copy and paste the page and actions files to our swag package. So that would be our product page and swag actions files. So we're going to copy these two. Copy, select swag, and paste them in there. Yes, please. Boom. Nice. Now we can minimize the chapter stuff because we don't need it anymore. But let's go through each of these files from top to bottom to see if we need to update any import statements since these files are in new locations. So starting with the first thing, we have our product page. Looks like there are no import statements, so this looks good. All right, so on to swag actions. No import statements here either, so no changes are necessary, but I am going to change the name of the file. Right now, if I wanted to import this, it would be from swag.swagactions. So we're saying swag twice. So let's actually rename this. So refactor, rename, and I'm just going to call it actions.py. There we go. Sweeto. So we'll minimize this, and let's look at our tests package now. We don't need to change any of the feature files, so we'll just leave those alone. So first up is conftest.py. Let's expand these import statements. Uh-oh, sure enough, this import statement is still from chapter 5, and we don't want to use anything from the chapter 5 package, so let's update this. I'll just delete this line so I can get my red squiggly. Hover over this, get my context action, import the name, and I don't want the chapter 5 one, I want swag.actions.loginwith. There we go, we're done there. Next up is test challenge 3.py. Let's check this out. Just as we expected, we also have the chapter 5 package in here too. Let's get rid of this. So same little trick that I did. We'll delete this line. We have this login with. And let's import the right thing. Import name, swag actions.loginwith. Perfect. But I'm also going to change this test file name to show its real intent, right? The whole point of this module is to test login. So let's rename it to that. So rename, and we'll say test login.py. That's a lot better. Next up is challenge 4. Ooh. This import statement is a bit different, but we do want to replace it. What we want is the swag actions module, right? But we just called it actions from the swag package. So we're just going to say from swag import actions. There we go. And then all of these we can change to just say actions. Now, if you're wondering how I did that, I did it with Shift Option, and then I can click and drag. That's on a Mac. On a Windows machine, I believe it is Shift Alt and then click and drag, but I could be wrong. But that's how you can do a multi-line edit like that. I'm going to rename this file too. Let's call it test checkout, since that's the real intent for this file. The very last file is testproductsort.py, but this should be a pretty quick fix. We want to get the product page from our swag package, not the chapter 5 package. So let's replace this with swag. And that's it. The file's done. So, woo! We did it. We're all set. Yeah, let's go. From now on, put any test files in your tests package. So any new test files you make should go in here. Any new feature files should go in your test.features directory. And anything that's relevant to the Swag Labs application belongs in this swag package. With that, you're ready for the rest of the challenges. So I'll see you in the next video.